This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
In a time when humanity is facing its greatest challenges, Debra Lynn's book, Divine Mirror, offers us hope and insight into our own true power and presence. The book leads us from the author's personal abyss, as mirrored through this mysterious work of art, through a transformative healing process. Together, we journey from tragedy to triumph, fear and failure to freedom. Divine Mirror opens a door of discovery to our own authentic male and female balance, helping us to understand each other with greater compassion and love. In this book, we encounter what the painting hints at, the sacred marriage or sixth way consciousness. This pathway gives us a taste of heaven on earth as we unfold our soul's divine plan, following the trail of hints left for us by Spirit. Valeria Teles interviews Debra Lynn, the author of Divine Mirror, a painting's hidden gift of conscious healing. Debra Lynn is a professional singer, direct line scholar of bel canto, and author of the Bel Canto Buzz, Beautiful Singing Made Simple. She uses her vocal expertise in combination with her spiritual and empowerment understanding to assist others to find and release their vocal potential, whether singing or speaking. In these transformational times, as we are being called to our highest good, this work supports the healthy function of the voice and supports the reclamation of one's aspirations and dreams. Her recent book release, Divine Mirror, a hidden painting's gift of conscious healing, chronicles the research of a small, mysterious painting gifted to her by her troubled father in a moment of profound healing. In this new book, Debra transparently shares the challenges of her 33-year journey out of trauma, codependency, distortion, and dysfunction into joy, peace, and love through the path of sacred marriage. Meet Debra at debralynn.org. Here's the interview with Debra Lynn.
In your own words, who is Debra Lynn?
Oh my goodness. She's an expansive soul seeker. She is someone who has varied interests and has walked a journey that has been really extraordinary in very simple ways.
I wonder how simple we can really live this life, Debra. Do you believe in such a thing as balance?
Absolutely. I think that when we look out upon the world, especially right now, that we certainly see the extraordinary complexity and challenge it is to look at life and see, okay, solutions to big problems and things like that. I certainly see that sort of the infinite nature of God is multi-faced and multi-layered, if you will. But I actually do believe there is a way to pull our experience of life into a simpler space in order not only for it to be more manageable, but also to feel like we're making an impact on that world.
You mentioned the word God. What is it? Yeah, I probably heard that question before.
We all giggle because,
Yeah.
It's another level of complexity, right? I often will refer to what I call a divine intelligence, a divine presence that just is so expansive that it's almost undefinable.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that energy impacts me on a daily basis. And so I do see it as sort of connected and separate from me in what I have referred to as a God space for a very long time.
What is your understanding of death, of losing the body? What is the meaning of that to you?
So, there's lots of layers to this too. On one level, I actually don't believe that there is a death, that the soul goes kind of on and has been as it was in the beginning and is now and ever shall be, forever
Right.
and ever, right? But I think sometimes looking at life that way is a little intense too, because you're like, all right, I'm having enough trouble dealing with right now. But I've experienced very close connection to the death process through some important people in my life, and I've participated in their transitions. And so the falling away of the body or the giving up of the body, but absolutely feeling the sense that the heart and soul of the being I was just sitting with is right there on the other side of letting go of the body.
Right.
So the energy supersedes this physicality somehow.
Right. And it's still here. It didn't go anywhere, really.
Yes, and I think that's somewhat of the. I'm not, I'm lighthearted. I'm a lighthearted being. It's kind of to me, it's kind of a cosmic joke. Is that yes, we worry about it and we're fearful of it and we're and in the reality, I've always had the sense that the stepping through the veil of what is perceived as death, that on the other side, our souls laugh and sing.
That's beautiful. A beautiful reminder for me and everyone listening, right? Are there coincidences? Do you believe in that, in coincidences, or not really?
No, I would say that I believe everything is connected.
Okay.
And that from my experience, okay, so in terms of knowing, I'm going to speak from just my experience, that every turning point, every moment, every choice point, every transition I've been through and relationship I've been through in my life, that every single interaction had purpose along the journey to direct me. Mm. There wasn't anyone that was accidental along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
No accidents, no coincidence.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I agree. 1,000%, 1,000,000,000%, 1,000,000,000,000%. Yes.
It's extraordinary if you really think about it, that, you could look at life that small and the detail, even in the moment to moment experiences we have in a daily way, that there are profound gleanings, if you will, that we can pull away from or sort of take to heart every single day, every single moment of this blessed life that we're given.
How did this happen? How did we end up aware that we were in a human body and we have all these thought processes and patterns? And have we chosen to be here? And what is the purpose of life in the human body, Debra?
Well, and I, as you were speaking your words and in that sequence, I absolutely believe that we choose to be here. And that is, again, from my experience, that we as human beings, spiritual entities in human form, coming into a space of density where we can touch things and taste things and feel things and see and hear things and explore and adventure, if you will, that we have this rare and extraordinary opportunity while we are here to really determine for ourselves what we believe, what we feel, what we think, what we, like that.
Right.
And if there is an overarching purpose to the journey, and I feel like this in terms of when we're looking at the suffering we're seeing, right? And many would say, why are we seeing so much suffering?
Right.
My sense is, and it's been sort of reiterated to me across my timeline of my life thus far, that unconditional love fundamentally is the exercise, is the journey, is the possibility.
I often talk about unconditional self-love. Do you believe that this is a sort of realistic goal to achieve?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And I would say that's where my heart is landing now in the profundity of what I've experienced across this journey, is that was probably always the destination, if you will, but just the destination to the point where then you start again, right? But now there's a whole nother journey once you actually experience that level of love. It is very profound to me.
Yeah, if we can touch that space of unconditional self-love and then expand that to life itself and everyone around us. Yeah.
Well, absolutely, because it's almost like it can't do anything but spill over.
Right.
The excitement of, especially, I remember in my particular case, I have felt starved of love most of my life. Yeah. And so I'm like a hungry woman. I'm like, wow, this is a whole new experience of myself. Who could I be now that I actually love who I am?
So healing, that's another word I use a lot. I've been working with it. And sometimes I get some guests to say that there's no healing to do, that everything's perfect. From your perspective, what is healing and what are some of the misconceptions about it?
Well, I think probably both truths could stand next to one another, that I have experienced deep, profound transformational healing because as a soul, that was the journey I was choosing to take. I can also say that every single moment was perfect along the journey. So was I healing or was I who I was at that moment?
Right.
So I think that's where sometimes we are challenged, is in the communication of these deeper gleanings or truths that we're coming to in our own manifestation as our I am presence.
Can we really express that truth, or the truth we find along the way with the healing spiritual journey? Can that be really expressed in words, or it's a matter of presence, really?
Well, I think it's both. And I feel like because I must have I have a very strong desire to bridge the contemplative spiritual nature of myself with the written word. And I think that my access point has been the nature of authenticity. How transparent am I willing to be? How authentic am I? How much of my journey am I willing to share? And through that, it isn't so much that there's an expectation that the reader or anyone that's looking at me or looking at my words would necessarily want to do the same thing, but that perhaps if they see me completely wide open to all my frailties, that there will be less shame, less embarrassment, less need for us to hide from one another.
True. How do we know, what are the signs when we are getting there, Debra, being transparent and authentic?
Well, I have to I'll share a little story with you. I was much younger. I was about 24 or 25, and I met a man at a spiritual retreat center in North Carolina called Canoga. And at the end of this retreat period of time, I was there. Some of it was silent, some of it was contemplation and classes. This particular man gave me a gift of a book called The Velveteen Rabbit. And inside the front cover, he wrote this very beautiful, very personalized message to me, a spiritual message to me about basically the fact that here was someone that was seeing my spiritual presence even at that young age. And I read that book and realized that what he was also seeing is the struggle I was having coming into comfort, if you will, with who I was.
Right.
And so what the Velveteen Rabbit says is that how we know we're getting there is when our buttons are pulled off, our seams are all split, we're completely ragged, and suddenly we're real. Suddenly we're alive and we're loved and we are loving. And for me, that's getting close.
Yeah, that sounds like very close.
That's getting very close.
Yeah. It goes back to love, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything for me keeps coming back to this one singular, because it's such a huge, that word holds so much in it.
That's true. It's an open space that holds everything.
Well, and I feel very blessed because I was privileged to live on Maui for 12 years. And one of the things that is said about Maui, and maybe if someone who's listening has been there, they'll relate to this, is that the veils are thinner. And so you could be walking on the beach or walking down the street or sitting having, a cup of coffee somewhere on Maui. And suddenly you're aware that you're sitting next to someone who's spiritually evolved. And you're like, and you're not exactly having a conversation with them, but there they are. And you're like, wow, I can feel the radiant vibration pulsating off of your body around this room. And I don't know who you are. And I feel like there in that space, that container called Maui, I was really blessed to experience what we'll call multidimensionality. It was like all possibilities existed side by side in one container.
I have heard that there are places on Earth that some people are drawn, more evolved people. They kind of say they want to go there. And I'm wondering why. I know I have read some history on that about the indigenous cultures and even more ancient cultures, more evolved, that they inhabit those areas. What is your perspective on that, Debra?
Well, we'll look at, Hawaii because I've spent, a third of my life living there.
Yeah.
And of course, the population that is pure Hawaiian there now is like 2% or less, very, very small. But for me, I find sort of, again, the humor, the cosmic humor. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I grew up in Connecticut, and then I traveled to Hawaii. All right, well, now in like the 1800s, the original missionaries that traveled to those islands a lot of them came from Connecticut. So I suddenly saw, there's a parallel. Okay, so now I'm in Hawaii. Well, one of the things I believe the missionaries discovered, not immediately, because as a missionary, they had a purpose and an agenda. They wanted to bring their spirituality to the islands. But I think that what they discovered and the reason they stayed is because the indigenous people already had such a profound understanding of unconditional love, aloha, that they may have realized at some point in that time that who was the student and who was the teacher. And I believe that the indigenous cultures of the world hold a frequency of aloha, of love in its very broadest depth that we could all learn from.
Yeah, because resonance, right? Energy.
Back to the simplicity, back to simple, right? If we, we look at indigenous people and we think, they're more simple, they're less technologically advanced, like that. I've often kind of giggled at the fact that our perception of what evolution means is might be just a bit askew.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe in the end, that's what we figure out, is that in the end, we figured out we already knew it in the beginning.
I had a conversation with Jamie Weil, and I remember we ended up in the end really agreeing, or going back to that inside job. That's the sacred place is within. You can only find within, not out there. We can be inspired, but I do believe, of course, because we are everything, the body, the mind, and the soul, and everything else in between. So it's resonance. We need to be inspired or activated, per se.
Right. And I think maybe that takes, maybe a little bit closer to even this book that I've written, and this idea that there could be a a mirroring effect,
Right.
This idea of the divine mirror.
Right. Yes.
In these sacred places, when one visits them, I feel like they reinforce the true self, the true nature of ourselves outside of our mental process and our suffering and our emotional challenges or our issues, whatever we might be dealing with personally in this lifetime. To look at a Sedona or to look at a Maui I remember being so poor on Maui, literally, I had not a dime. And I would stand on the beach and look at the sunset and go, how can I possibly be anything but grateful?
Right.
It's a whole different level of abundance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will be asking questions about your book in a moment about symbology. So symbols, so they activate, what's inside.
I feel like that's exactly right. That's exactly, and for a period of time, if you get the opportunity to go to a place like that and just be there in the energy, and there's no doing this, you're just able to literally stand by Red Rock, by the Red Bell in Sedona, for example, and just be there. It's hard not to acknowledge a greater universal force in action.
Right. We can feel that, going back to simplicity, nature around us, any form of nature, animals too, that just, to me, it's freedom or beauty. I love the word beautiful.
Beauty, that's right. Or I have some roses that I brought in today to look at as I was doing this interview, and I look at a rose, or like you said, if you meditate and you go into your own personal space, my goodness gracious, the expansiveness of the universe is all within us.
Right. Yes.
Like, wow.
Yeah. Wow is right.
Wow.
Yeah. How can this be? Right. It's incredible. Yeah. To me, it's a miracle. Isn't it? Life is a miracle.
Life is a miracle. Absolutely. I am grateful every second of every day, no matter what is happening.
You sound like that.
No matter what is happening.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's beautiful. Thank you, Debra, for your presence. It's really beautiful. So you wrote the book, Divine Mirror, a painting's hidden gift of conscious healing. How did you become a writer? And what was the main inspiration and intention of writing your book?
So in terms of becoming a writer, I've always, like I said earlier, have had a fascination with communication. That I believe I've been blessed through the challenges of my life, been blessed with, we'll call them insights, but I think it's more reflections, contemplations, navigation, if you will, through what I've called the abyss. All right. And so I've had a desire to communicate. For me, the written word is one of the most complicated ways to try to do that because of semantics, of how we think about words and how, right? And so really trying to express authenticity in a way that would perhaps assist someone reading, not that they would be wanting to go through my journey, but assist them to understand their own journey in a way that gives them more personal freedom with it, that they can feel, I don't know, something about the beauty of themselves, the hero or heroine of themselves in my work because of what I've experienced.
There was the main inspiration to write it too, or the intention to have this?
It's always been about trying to connect with others.
Yeah.
I feel like we have, in many ways, bought into the illusion of separation here in this experience called life.
Yes.
And of course, with COVID, it's become even more challenging. But the reality for me is that there is no separation between me and thee. No matter who you are, and no matter what you're going through, and no matter, I think that takes us into the next level of unconditional love when we move out of judgment. What if we were really here to actually just look into one another's eyes and experience the love and grace of the divine within ourselves?
Wow. It's to lessen the suffering, isn't it? Unnecessary
Absolutely.
suffering, really.
Absolutely. There's a one of my primary guides, if you will, someone's writing I've followed for a long time is White Eagle. I mention his words in my book, and in one of his passages, he talks about that one of the greatest gifts that we can give to anyone is both alleviating and lifting our own, shifting out of our own suffering and our own pain, but also lifting and elevating others out of their suffering so that they might too find joy, peace, happiness, love, compassion, gratitude. Yeah.
Right. By doing that for ourselves first, it seems to me like it becomes easier to help others. So for a moment, without disclosing everything, of course, we don't want to talk too much about the story in the book, not everything, but talk to me for a moment about your journey, the healing and spiritual journey, Debra, that you have been through.
Well, I think that if I go to the core, one of the core components in this particular story, because it, as you know, it's like I'm weaving more than one story together in this, but the through line, if you will, is the healing primarily with my father and also with my mother. And I call it a healing because my perception and my experience of who they were when I started the journey and became aware of the starting of the journey to where I ended up was such an arc of you know what I mean? That was it was accessed through my own heart. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to change. They didn't have to be anything other than they were. And my experience of them transformed 180 degrees. And by the time they were leaving this planet and I was going through the death process with them, there was so much love present. I think that is, for me, that's the big, why is this such an important story? Because wow.
So self-discovery and having the courage to do that, but not just the courage. What I think about a lot of times is it's choosing. Because some people say it's timing. We are not ready to go through these kinds of journey, the deeper ones. So do you believe that that's a matter of is a timing idea, concept, or a choosing? Really?
Again, I'm going to have to say, I feel like it's both. I think that if I were to look back on the walk, I was guided to the choices that I was then ready to, there's that phrase that God does not give you any more than you have the grace to handle. Well, there were moments where I questioned that a lot and questioned my sanity and questioned my, who I was and what was wrong with me and, all of the, trauma-based, conversations. Yeah. But I would say that where it became a choice is that I made a fundamental choice very early on in my life that I was going to walk the path of unconditional love way before any of the challenges emerged as challenges. So I had made an early choice.
Wow.
But I do think there was a point in the book with my father where I could have kept my perception of him as it was for the rest of my life and lived in traumatic separation from him. Right. And I chose to stop that dialogue inside myself and choose in one moment to have compassion for someone outside of myself. And it changed and transformed my life with my father.
I think doubts, they will always be there.
Oh yeah, and there can be temper tantrums because I threw a few in my lifetime as a small child and then as an adult, where I was like, no, God, I don't want to do this. I don't, no, I can't, and yet I would be waking up going, okay, here I go, all right, I'm going to choose it anyways. But I think one of the profound pieces for me that ties back to Divine Mirror and the story of this painting is that it was in that moment that I chose to take a different path with this man who was so pivotal to my self-worth as my father and what I was needing to sort of come to balance and self-love within self, it all kind of came into that masculine container. And the next day after the event that I made that conscious choice was the day that he gave me this painting. And I knew when he gave it to me that it was a profound spiritual gift based on what I was looking at.
Right. So that's
something he did not recognize. He did not recognize it as that.
This might be a good moment to talk about the sacred marriage, the masculine and feminine coming together, the harmony. Talk to me about that, Debra.
So the way that it was originally sort of introduced to me was, again, through this presence called White Eagle. And the idea was that within ourselves, we had, no matter what gender we identified with or non-binary, it didn't really matter what our container was, but that in the universe of balance, the yin and the yang, if you will, this sort of masculine and feminine energy that could interact with each other, that for millennia, there has been imbalance in one direction, okay? And it's been suggested to me that prior to what we would kind of think of as a patriarchal society, that before this, if we go back 10,000 years, it was exactly the opposite. So that it was matriarchal and we had the same distorted imbalance.
Right.
So for me, the sacred marriage is this idea that within ourselves, we can take the qualities of the masculine or masculine presence, the qualities of the feminine presence, that both which can dwell within us and do dwell within us, that we can bring them together in a united oneness that will bring our own hearts into a more elevated state of awareness, and again, back to this return to love, return to unconditional love.
Yeah.
That we do all the work within ourselves.
A question came to mind about this balance, this harmony. Did we ever experience this kind of balance on earth, feminine and masculine coming together?
So I would say that, there's no way for me to say with any kind of assurance, but this is what my heart believes, is that we started there. And I think that when we began, okay, and we have things like our various religious tomes, if you will, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah. We have little inklings within these writings that suggest that there was at one time a balanced place, an Eden, if you will, a moment where we were connected together in a way that was only love. And that there are some that believe we separated. Like if you go all the way to Lemuria, that we chose to separate in this sort of giant experiment to see what would happen, to experience ourselves as separate from God, even though that was a complete and total illusion. So yes, I do believe that in the beginning, there was only one.
Right.
And I believe that now there really is only one.
Yes.
But we sure do see a lot of separation.
So it goes back to the paradox, right?
Right, but I feel like there's a journey. There's a really cool, what has happened to me in my life. There's a really cool journey we can take if we're curious.
Right.
We don't even have to decide that we believe or don't believe, or we agree or we don't agree. Right. We just have to be curious about who we are here.
I'm wondering if you can give to the listeners some guidance. What's the first steps if someone wants to uncover more of who they are?
Well, I would say that from my perspective of my journey, that because again, it was a long, I would say my journey through what I have called the abyss, the dark night of the soul, that for me lasted probably almost 30 years. That I can look back before going sort of through this journey of shadow and darkness and trying to emerge from my own ancestral suffering, if you will, some would call it that, that I, in a moment, stopped the noise, stopped the anger at self, stopped what we'll call the self-loathing. Yeah. And I hugged myself and cried with myself and told myself that I loved myself, even if I couldn't see it anywhere around me. Right. That it was going to be okay, like comforting a small child. Right. That if we can just find one glimmer, one sliver of compassion for self in this amazingly challenging journey we call life, that it opens a tiny little doorway into the heart, that I believe everything is through that keyhole.
I don't know how many times I can say yes. I will say yes for the rest of my life to that one. I keep saying it. Yes, yeah. Thank you.
There's a key that I know some of my references would be construed as Christian, and to the audience, please know that I view myself as spiritual, and I participate and appreciate and honor and revere all the spiritual traditions. But there is something that Jesus said, that the kingdom of heaven is within. And I think that if we were to actually just contemplate on that possibility, that we can transform the way we experience and look at the world and look at our lives just by the possibility that the love we are is already fully present within us. Right. There's nothing we have to do or earn right? There's nothing we have to become. We just have to accept it.
About the possibility. Yeah, imagine. I love the way you say that, because that's what it takes. I do connect imagination to intuition. They're very much connected to me. So I love the way you say that. See possibilities, imagine. Yes.
And I might add one more thing to someone who might be struggling and might be really wanting to get to start and to feel like they could maybe connect into love at a deeper level. There was given to me an understanding many years ago when I moved to Hawaii that I had guides. I had angelic presence with me. I had beings of light that I could have access to anytime I wanted. But there was just one caveat, that in order for me to have access to this higher level wisdom that was already present with me, I had to ask. I had to ask for assistance. I had to just be willing to, in that moment, say, I need help. And I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to think, or I don't know where to go, or I don't know how to solve this problem. I ask for assistance, and the assistance floods in like crazy. They're right next to you. It's the very strangest thing, right? Because there is just a veil. It's just a veil.
Right.
There's no separation.
We're almost at the end, and I have so many notes here and questions for you. Way too many. Way too many. You are a professional singer too. So how did you become a professional singer? And do you connect singing to spiritual healing?
Absolutely. So I came in very young knowing that I was to be a singer. And because of some challenge with my mom and dad, very young, I was 7 when they told me to shut up the first time that I remember. I basically, got all my gumption up and said, well, I'll show you. I'm just going to become this great singer. And so that's a 7-year-old mentality, right? Well, when I started singing in public at 11, and I was training at 15, and then I got my degree in voice, and then had very challenging circumstances that indicated I wasn't going to have a career, but I really wanted it. So I fought to understand and be able to sing at a high level. And I was blessed and guided through that journey. What's ironic to me is that my objective was to become a professional singer. And then what happened is I became this wonderful professional singer on Maui. I was loved and adored on Maui. I had this great experience, but as soon as I became the professional singer, I was asked to teach it. And not knowing if I could, and then discovered that I almost loved teaching more than I loved singing, because I could watch a person's transformation in my voice studio happen in less than 30 minutes. Wow. So I understood my body mechanics internally to such a high degree that I was able to take someone into my body, help them feel it in their body, and have them access what I understood that took me 20 years and $40,000. I could help them in less than an hour. And that was so profound to me. And then it was about the transformation that would occur when someone accessed their own voice, no matter what they wanted to do with it. Right. When they knew they had a beautiful voice, right, whether they were singing or speaking, it didn't matter. They suddenly came alive because, oh my gosh, I can do what I want. I can do what I want with this voice. So for me, it is very closely related to transformation. And I do feel it's part of my transformational work on the planet.
Yeah, it very much sounds like to express our inner wisdom, expression of the soul.
And the vibration. So I would take it back into spirituality, is the more that we understand how to tune our voice, how to lift our frequency, how to actually access a more effortless, if you will, production with the voice, then suddenly we're back into the spiritual realm. Because if you recall, in the beginning, it was the sound, it was the word. And that sound vibration, when we like right now, I work a lot in the competitive a cappella world, where we're singing together in 4 parts. And when these 4 parts sing in tune, you can hear sort of a 5th note sound, like an angelic voice that sounds itself above all of it. And for me, when we get that experience of harmony and we participate in that level of harmony, not only are we actively healing our voice, but we are actively healing our heart.
Right.
With each other.
Yes, yeah.
Together.
Right, collective healing, collective
healing. Isn't that cool? Yes. We can all sing together.
Yes, yeah. Just talk to somebody else about, she's a professional singer too, and that's the way she talks about the voice and singing, how divine it is.
Yes, I actually listened to that interview. I
loved
what she had to say. Yes. Yeah. I loved what she had to say about the voice and her work and what she's doing. And absolutely, I believe there's many, 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 many teachers of singing and singers on the planet now. All we have to do is look at American Idol, right? Is that there's lots of interest in singing. There's lots of people that are out there willing to help. Just go to YouTube and type in singing. And I feel like this is the time. Claim your voice. This is it. Right now.
We just talked about balance, having this feminine and masculine energies coming together in harmony.
Yes.
We might return to it if it was already here at some point, or it's will happen for the first time. That's what comes. But it might be that within kind of perception. It's not really out there, right?
I think that, if I go to just what I mean when I say divine mirror, this is what I mean. That when my pieces, if you will, those parts of myself that I've exiled or that I have left behind or that I feel shame about or that I'm sad about, right? When I absorb all of that trauma and embrace that suffering within myself and forgive and have compassion for self, right? Then we come into that balance. Once that balance is in place and we shine that mirror, no matter what is shining at us, no matter what suffering we see, no matter what distortion we see, and we reflect back as balance and equal and the masculine and feminine together in union within self externally, we cannot help but see it externally. It will happen. It will happen.
Because it's not out there, it's here. It's always here, right?
We can help. We can help this process along.
Yes, yeah, of course. I love the title of your book, though. When I read it, I'm like, wow, it's very inspirational just to read it, the title.
Thank you. Well, I think when you look at the research that I include about this little painting, you'll also see that there was a message, and a message coming across 400 years that talks to this same idea of sacred marriage, or the same idea of the divine within the context of our life, and that the painting itself is revealing something that someone painted on a canvas 400 years ago and hid it underneath another painting to protect it.
Right. And
so this is amazing history.
For some of us, it's just a matter of having the opportunity to do it. I have had a lot of experience like questioning myself. Is this really real unconditional love or love? How can this be? And then looking around and seeing the chaotic reality and then questioning the truth.
Well, I think we can also feel very small and insignificant here. We can feel overwhelmed by what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And I will tell you from personal practice, turning off the news, turning off the noise, turning down the technology a bit in my life, that you can, I think, come into a place just like a rose, literally this simple. You take one rose and you hold it in your hand and you look and contemplate that one rose. And what you will see is nothing but beauty.
So we're almost at the end. I have these ending questions for you. But before that, would you like to add anything or read a passage in your book?
I think, just to add that one of the pieces of history that I talk about in my book is a phrase that was coined by an organization called the Knights Templar in 1099, a really long time ago. And the phrase is love all, serve all. And I feel like those 4 words offer us a possibility and an opening into a pathway where we really could contribute to the healing of this place in a profound way, if we could get our hearts around the idea that there is no one that's insignificant.
I love the song you have in the book. It's called The Heaven in Your Heart.
Heaven in Your Heart.
Beautiful
yes, I wrote that.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Miracles to grow by love to make us whole. Really beautiful. I also love a passage that you have towards the end, the pandemic postlude. You mentioned about the phone call, and then, I love when you say that. Somehow I know I am on the phone with God, the man who called, and then... Do you want to talk about that?
Could you just read what he said? Read the quote.
Beautiful.
I don't have it in front of me. What does it say? Because I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, beautiful. He said, we are all multidimensional, intergalactic, metaphysical beings of light, stars finding our way home from heaven to earth.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's when you say...
I did. I feel like I'm on the phone with God.
Right.
Of those moments. That's right. There have been many of those moments in my life, but that was a particularly profound one.
Yes.
Particularly profound one.
So thank you again, Debra, for being this light, for being open to let this awareness of truth shine upon us, because we need those reminders all the time. That's interesting to say, but yeah, it's a reminder too, for those who already know.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for reaching out to me and invite me to talk with you, because I believe you are also this radiant being of light and offering us a pathway.
Thank you for the encouragement to the body. The heart and the mind, they understand, but the body, needs some encouragement.
That's right.
So my final questions to you, let me see. I will ask you this one, which I ask most of my guests. If you knew you would die soon, meaning leaving the body, would you make any change or do anything in a different way?
No, I would not. I would not. I think that maybe with the caveat that if I could have understood sooner that those that I had challenging relationships with were actually my greatest spiritual teachers, I feel like I might have been able to move through some of the pain of my life much faster.
Yeah.
And so I would say that from a place of speed of getting since there is really no place to get to other than where we are, right?
Right.
It would be more just, I wish I hadn't lingered quite so long in thinking I was separate from these beings, when the reality was they were there to show me and teach me. And I had painful divorces. So yeah, they were there to teach me something very profound about who I was and how I needed to shift something in myself if I wanted to actually actualize a balanced, loving relationship with another human being.
Do you regret anything? This is not a regret, is it? You couldn't do anything about it anyway.
No, I don't think so. I feel like, I think if there were any regrets, it would be that I was afraid of looking at my shame. That I really feel like I hid. Denial is pretty easy when you're dealing with things like codependency. And I feel like I really needed to take the veils off. So I kind of regret that. But I would say really and truly, I did it in the time frame I was capable of doing it in. And so I'm just grateful to be here now.
And 2 more questions. What is another word for healing?
Transformation.
And what are 3 things about life you know for sure as of this moment?
I know that I love humanity. I know that I love myself. And I know that we are guided by a divine presence that is so omnipotent, infinite, expansive, and loving beyond our wildest imagination.
Thank you so much, Debra, again, for your joyful, enlightened presence, your awareness of this deep wisdom and the work that you do in the world. It takes work and it is an effort. So thank you so much for being there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And before we say goodbye, where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
So my website is my name, debralynn.org. And my books are available on Amazon.com, Divine Mirror, and also my singing book, The Bel Canto Buzz. I'm on Facebook. I have mostly a personal page, and I also have an Instagram page. But you can find all of those access points. YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, I will say, that has, if anyone's interested in the voice piece, there's a lot of videos explaining how these inner mechanics work and how magical a person is inside and how you can access that. And so that's my Debra Lynn Bel Canto YouTube channel. So I'd say those are the best ways to find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Valeria.
Bye for now, Debra.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Debra Lynn and her work, please visit debralynn.org.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.